Alert: American troops issue shock anthem message. The NFL players' protests of the national anthem have sparked controversy and backlash from people infuriated by the disrespect to the nation and its military. According to the Daily Caller, polls have come out revealing how the military feels about the anthem protests. Not surprisingly, a majority disagree with the protests, a fact obscured when shown to Americans. On Sunday, a poll was conducted by the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, an advocate for veterans. The poll revealed that 62% of veterans and active duty soldiers disagree with the NFL protests, with only 35% saying they agree with the NFL players. What's interesting about these findings is that they were muddied up by the other findings in the poll to make it seem like veterans and military were divided about the protests. Paul Ryaikoff, founder and CEO of IAVA, claimed in a statement that the troops were not in majority opposition to the protests, but instead divided. Much of America is talking about the protests in the NFL. And many people are claiming to speak on behalf of veterans and troops. We wanted to give veterans and troops the opportunity to speak for themselves. The most important takeaway from this groundbreaking data is that there is no monolithic veteran opinion. The opinions of veterans are often as diverse as those of all Americans, the statement read. An odd statement considering 62% said they did not agree with the protests and only 35% said they agreed. The polls were highlighted and presented in such a way that the results were misleading. Instead of coming out and saying the end result was 62% who disagreed with the protests, the diverse actions veterans and military were using to respond to the protests were cited. Among those polled, 39% said they would stop watching the games because of the NFL players' protests and 14% said they would continue watching the games despite disagreeing with the protests. These numbers, among others, were used to help obscure the fact that nearly two-thirds of those polled did not like the protesting and a little over a third showed support. Ryaikoff's intentional effort to obscure the facts is not surprising considering the complaints voiced about him by his employees, according to the Daily Caller. Employees cited the exploitation of female service members for donations, misuse of grant money, and Ryaikoff's abusive nature. Regardless, the frustration shown by veterans and the military is no surprise given the complete disrespect shown by NFL players when protesting the national anthem. The players claim to oppose racial injustice, but do so by disrespecting the flag meant to show support for the military and the country, both of which grant freedom and rights to all races. These brave men and women fighting for freedom and liberties have been spat upon by NFL players who refuse to acknowledge and respect those sacrifices. It's amazing to see that these military men and women upset by the disrespect shown to them still defend their right to do so. 98% of those polled believed the players had a constitutional right to protest. This is an incredible display of the selflessness these soldiers and former soldiers have to their country and those who live within it. These brave men and women teach everyone that no matter our differences,